Hey there, this is X Cult Baby, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Usually, when I cover topics due to specific religions, I'm usually talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. But today I'm going to be talking about the LDS Church, the Church of the Latter Day, the Church, whatever, the Mormons. I'm talking about the Mormons, okay? And the reason that I'm talking about the Mormons today is that this PDF, a book called The Church and the Negro, was sent to me by Alanis, aka Atheist Tea Girl. If you've not seen Atheist Tea Girl's channel, you definitely should. It's great, great content, and she sent me and a few other people this PDF, which she actually made herself because this book apparently is no longer in print. She had to go and find it and actually took the pictures and made this PDF. So thank you so much to her for doing that. Without it, I would not have this amazing material to go over. Because I may not be an ex-Mormon, but I am a Negro. So, um, yeah, I have some thoughts on this. And just looking through it briefly myself, it kind of reminded me how um, as a Jehovah's Witness, there's quite a bit of misogyny within the religion, and I kind of excused it to myself, like, yeah, well, it's fine for XYZ reason in my head that I could think of, and kind of reading this made me think I'm sure that that's how Black Mormons feel about the church's past with people of color, specifically Black people. Um, I'm sure that in their mind they have all these apologetics and excuses, and it's not quite that way, it's fine and whatever. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting little deep dive here. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to read is the preface, which is very important because it states basically that the author is not speaking on behalf of the church. This isn't officially sanctioned by the Mormon church. But it makes it pretty clear that the author did consult church leaders in the making of this and was encouraged to do so. So it's not officially sanctioned doctrine or anything like that. This wasn't produced by the Mormon church, evidently, but the person who made it got some help from leaders of the Mormon church. So it may as well be official, but it technically isn't, I guess. Anyways, so this book was written in 1967, apparently. And so there's definitely a lot of civil rights things happening right now. So the first chapter talks a little bit about how discrimination exists and how people are trying to get equality, blah, blah, blah. And then the author says, and this, I'm going to start with this underlined paragraph, the Mormon church has been attacked as one that discriminates against the Negroes in the community. Well, if you're still using the word Negro, might be why. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Mormon religion is a voice that offers peace to a war-torn world, peace of mind, of body, and of spirit. When people bring up the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses basically break up families with their shunning policy, they basically say the same thing. Yeah, that's a thing in there, but we offer so much peace and happiness and blah, 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 blah. Bleh. Let's see. It offers faith to black and white alike in a world that doubts God's existence. The church asks, first of all, I'm sure not that many people were doubting God's existence in 1967. I mean, today, the United States are basically still being ruled like a theocracy practically. So, yeah, I'm sure that that was not a huge issue in 1967. I'm pretty sure you could all but guarantee that the majority of politicians were Christian then, as much as you probably can today. So, anyways, the church asks the question, is there any greater cure for the sickness of the world than the gospel of Jesus Christ? It answers no. The gospel is the message that Mormons bear. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the gospel encompasses every man, woman, child, all the races, creeds, and colors. And that's great that they're saying that. But it's one thing to say it and to put it into practice. Like, there's this politician right now that I can't remember for the life of her name, but she's like advocating that interracial marriage is immoral according to the Bible, and she's running for some kind of office, or she already is in some kind of office. I don't 100% remember how the story goes, but if you are up to date on current events, you know who I'm talking about. Like, you can say, I'm not a racist. I just think that it's immoral for a black person and a white person to get married and have children. I think that's disgusting. I think it's immoral and it's against the Bible and it's wrong. But I have no problem with black people. Like, how can you really say that? And the Mormon church does basically the same thing with, like, it's the same kind of logic. Like, oh, black people are equal and good and they're just as much a man as anybody else, but, they are cursed. Like, and they can't hold the priesthood. But, they're just as equal and good and everything. It's just, yeah, I mean, they discriminate on the basis of race, but all races are equal. Okay, sure. All right, where to keep going? This book is written for the express purpose of explaining to the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, thank you, the doctrine of the church concerning the Negro. It is expected that many non-Mormons, as well as Negroes, will read this book. I'm both. Hi. It is hoped that all who do will be open-minded and fair in their evaluation of the Mormon position. I am about as open-minded as understanding that internalized misogyny and racism are things that exist, especially when you're in religions like this, because I was in a religion like this and I had a lot of internalized misogyny. It's like, I thought of myself as a feminist, but I didn't see any problem with the fact that there were a lot of positions in the Jehovah's Witness kind of church organization that women couldn't hold on the basis of them being women. So, yeah, and that was just fine in my head. Like, I totally understand the people who feel this way, that why they feel that way, because they really can't reconcile those two things. So they kind of just have to accept that that's how it is. So, yeah, I'm open-minded enough to understand that you may not think of yourself as an outright racist for writing this shit, but, like, you totally are. You totally are. And I feel bad for you. Anyway, when the reader has finished with this brief explanation, he may find that he does not agree with the opinions herein expressed. That is his right. But the author and the church are also entitled to their right of believing as they will and following the dictates of their own consciences. Yeah, I've heard a lot of that kind of thing with, like, the gay cake debacle and things like that, being like, well, you have your right to not agree with me, but I have my right to discriminate, basically. I have the right to discriminate because it's a religiously held belief. And I have my right to do that. Like, you have the right to believe that I'm wrong. And it's like, that's not how rights work. If your rights take away my rights, you can't have those rights. It's not a right then. If what you believe is a right takes away mine, then it's not a right. Because then it's detracting from mine. So you're imposing your will on me. So, like, yeah, this has come up a few times, like going back to the gay cake debacle. Part of me kind of thinks, well, I guess that, I definitely thought at the time, being a Christian at the time, well, I guess that, they should have the right to not be able to bake the cake that supports something that they believe is wrong. Like, I know that if I was a baker and somebody asked me to bake a cake with a little buttercream frosting swastika on it, I wouldn't do it. And I can't quite pinpoint what the difference between those two things are, besides the fact that one can be shown to be harmful and one can't, And I know that there are people who have discussed this that have more well thought out opinions on this than I do. I'm just kind of talking into the camera because I'm not 100% sure where the line is supposed to be drawn. I know that there are people that have kind of figured this out, and I'd love to hear from those people. If you have some thoughts on this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, because I'm not 100% settled on that issue. But obviously, in this book, the guy is basically saying, well, you have the right to believe that we're wrong, basically, but, we have the right to religiously discriminate on the basis of race, I guess. A wise man once said, your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. It's a good quote. Whether a person wants to swing his fist for civil rights or in the name of justice, morality, human dignity, freedom, liberty, equality, or God, his rights end where another's begin. In other words, the church believes that all have a right to enjoy their individual freedoms as long as they do not prevent others from enjoying their rights. What the author fails to realize is that by withholding the priesthood and other things from black people, that is kind of withholding rights. So their imposing of this is definitely swinging at some noses. So, chapter 2, they go into, discrimination isn't okay, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Yeah, that's cool. They also believe, apparently, that, black people and white people should be equal by law. That's fine. That's cool. Okay, so there's an underlined part here. Mormons believe that the celestial kingdom where God and the righteous dwell will be filled with the worthy sons and daughters of God from all races, including noble Negroes who hold high Christian ideals of love of God and love of fellow man. Sounds all well and good there, but we shall keep reading. Just as a side note, I would also like some ex-Mormon or just in Mormon input on this because I don't know a whole lot about the faith. I don't understand it as extensively as I understand my own, obviously. So if there are some things that I'm missing here, clearly, when I'm talking about this, I would love to hear about that in the comments. So then it literally just lists a bunch of scriptures about Cain and the mark of Cain. So basically, Genesis chapter, let's see, what chapter was it? Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 27. So if you want to read that on your own time, go ahead, but I'm not going to. But essentially, it's the story of Cain and Abel. I actually did a video about that. You should go watch it if you haven't yet. That's where the whole mark of Cain thing comes from, is that God supposedly marked him, I guess. So, biblical scholars of the world are at great variance as to what exactly was the mark of Cain. Because of that, I find it very weird that the Mormons assume that it's literally black skin. But anyway. The phrase set a mark upon is mentioned only twice in the entire Bible. Both of these references are found in the Old Testament. First is in Genesis 4:15. The Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. The other reference is located in Ezekiel 9:4, which states, set a mark upon the foreheads of the men. So apparently this seems to indicate that it might be some kind of mark on the forehead. Maybe. But apparently other interpretations interpret this not as like a literal mark on the head, but some kind of sign, with some kind of visible sign, though. So basically, it's not agreed upon exactly what the mark of Cain was, but basically it looks like out of nowhere, President Brigham Young, who I guess was president of the Mormon Church at some point, quote, sincerely and somewhat abruptly, President Brigham Young has told us that the mark of Cain was a black skin. For the Latter-day Saint, no further explanation is required. That is a quote. And basically, he says, well, if you're a Mormon, that's all you need is a prophet to be like, means he's black. Boom. That's all you need to know. But there's supposedly more evidence than that. Of course, if you could prove that your prophets were really prophets, then you wouldn't need any other explanation. But anyway, basically they argue that Cain is the father of the Negroid race. The Negroid, that's literally what it says. So there's some talk about why Cain received the mark. I'm not super concerned with that. What was the curse of Cain? Oh, and this is a fun little sentence. It's trying to figure out what the curse of Cain is. At this point, the LDS scholar must leave the Bible as a sole reference and turn to the other sources of revealed truth. So not only can you not prove that the Bible itself is the source of truth, but then you're like, well, we can't even prove this just from what the Bible says, so we're going to have to go elsewhere. Again, kind of how the Jehovah's Witnesses work sometimes. They don't think of it that way. They don't think of themselves as having other, divinely inspired books besides the Bible, but they basically treat other Watchtower publications like they're all equally divinely inspired. Because they're like, well, they're based on the Bible. And it's like, okay, there's definitely some things in those that are not out of the Bible. So where did that come from, if not from the Bible? Are you going to claim that that's divinely inspired too? Because the governing body don't think that they're divinely inspired. But anyway. Okay, so again, there's more talk about Cain, like why did the Lord reject Cain's offering, which I'm slightly curious about, but it's kind of off topic, so I'm just gonna skip that. So, the seed of Cain preserved through the flood. Hey, that's a good question. Are, uh, if all the sons of Cain are black, supposedly, and that's where the black race came from, then how did they survive the flood? Because surely Noah was not a son of Cain. But anyway, let's see. Before embarking on the question of Cain's descendants today, it becomes necessary to demonstrate that at least one of the children of Cain survived the universal flood. So, apparently, their idea here is that Ham, one of the sons of Noah, married a a negress, and through them, the seed of Cain continued, basically. So that's how they perpetuated the Negroid race. Interesting. So, after understanding how they got to that conclusion, which is still hella sketchy, what does this mean for Negroes and the Mormon Church? So basically, at this point, the author is trying to make the case for why the priesthood being withheld from the black race, the Negro race, why that's not discrimination on racial bias, which, to be completely honest, there's really no reason, there's no way to determine that. You could say that it's not out of prejudice or hate or anything like that, but in the end, it is literally discrimination based on race. If it's literally just a matter of are you or aren't you black, okay, then if you're black, you can't have the priesthood. That's literally racial discrimination. There's no way to get around that. The reasoning behind that racial discrimination may vary, but it literally, no matter how you turn it, is racial discrimination. So they're going to examine these three questions. What is the priesthood? Why can't the Negroes hold the priesthood now? And when will the Negroes be allowed to possess the priesthood? Interesting. According to them, priesthood is divine authority which is conferred upon men that may officiate in the ordinances of the gospel. So essentially, it is a church position. It's not necessarily a spiritual thing, but it's a leadership position within the Mormon Church. So, the keys of the priesthood have been passed down from Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormons, to the present prophet by divine revelation and by the laying on of hands by those who are in authority. So basically, the priesthood started with this Joseph Smith guy, and he was able to pass it down to other people, and those people are able to pass it down. But apparently they're not allowed to pass it down to black people. So, why can't the Negroes hold the priesthood now? There are two major reasons. The first reason deals with the concept of a proper time. The second has to do with the LDS belief in a pre-mortal life. These both seem kind of whack. So, the proper time thing is something that Jehovah's Witnesses kind of have too, which is part of the reason why they can continuously get away with basically telling their members, like, oh, you know how those prophecies didn't come true, or oh, you know how we changed our minds about this policy or doctrine. Well, it wasn't the proper time for that spiritual food yet, blah, blah, blah. So, I guess that they have this idea that just now is not the time yet, and that's not determined by humans, of course, it's determined by God. Funny how the humans are the ones carrying it out, though, so how could you possibly know if it was a choice made by God or by people? So they're making the case here that because Jesus told the 12 apostles not to go into the land of the Gentiles right away, and later they did when they were allowed to, the idea is, okay, so basically, the priesthood isn't allowed for Negroes now, but at some point it will be. So they're basically just making the case that because there's another example of kind of discrimination in the Bible that was kind of time-based, then the same thing will happen, I guess. And it's so weird because they seem to have this policy that they basically do acknowledge that at some point black people will be allowed to hold the priesthood, just not right now, is what they're saying. And they don't have any real excuse for it other than it's not now, it's up to God's timeline. It's like, well, why is God withholding it then? Hello? Okay, so here's the premortal life thing. By premortal life is meant a previous existence as individuals before coming to this earth. So, I mean, a previous life that isn't like a human life. Specifically, the doctrine refers to a pre-existence in another sphere with God as his sons and daughters in his heavenly home. So basically, you're like an angel alien before, I guess. So the argument here is that they basically had, even in this pre-existent life, every spirit or whatever has free will, so they can do evil and be sinful and stuff. So basically, you're prejudged not for your mortal life, but for your pre-mortal life, and you're basically set up in the world that gives you opportunities to praise God based on how you were in your previous life. So basically, what they're saying is that there are people who, in their pre mortal life, basically did things that would make them not, what's the word I'm looking for? They wouldn't qualify for the priesthood. So they, those people get born as black people so that they are marked as uneligible for the priesthood because of something they did in their pre-mortal existences. Yeah, this is so ridiculous. Basically, they're being judged not on the merits of their life, but on their pre-existence that they have no memory of. Mormons don't believe that you remember anything about your pre-mortal life, so at least as far as I know. So you're being punished for a crime that your soul committed, but not like the person that you are now. I really like this note here, but yeah, not suffering for Cain's transgressions. Basically, they're arguing that they are being punished for something that they actually did, and because they did that, they were born black. Instead of it being the other way around, they're punished for being black. They're punished for the thing they did that caused them to be born black. The evidence seems to be clear that Cain's descendants have a skin of black and are prevented from holding the priesthood because of their own pre-existent behavior. As stated in our second article of faith, we believe that men will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression. Holding to this same reasoning, the Negroes are not being restricted for Cain's sins, but for their own acts in the pre-existence. I like the note here. It says, and this isn't racist? Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, come on. Like I said before, no matter what your reasoning is on this, it is racial discrimination. Regardless of what your motivation for that discrimination is, even if you're not doing it because you think consciously that black people are inferior, if you're not allowing them to do something on the basis of their skin color, that is racial discrimination. Full stop. I love this page because it's way marked up. And I don't know if it was Alanis who did the marking up or if she found the book like this. I don't know, but either way, whoever did this, shout out to you. It's great. So, when will the Negroes receive the priesthood? Brigham Young revealed that the Negroes will not receive the priesthood until a great while after the second advent of Jesus Christ, whose coming will usher in a millennium of peace. So, according to Jehovah's Witness theology, the millennium of Jesus' reign is like way far off. Like, well, not way far off. It's like after Armageddon. So basically, not in this lifetime, not in this world. But yeah, according to the notes here, which I'll double check them later, but according to the notes here, it was only in June 1978 that blacks were given the priesthood, which is like not even 10 years after this was written or something. Like not that far away. Or was it 1976? 1960. I don't remember exactly when this was written. I already forgot. But the point is it's really not that far away. Like it's like 10 years. Revelation? In view of what President Young and others have said, it would be foolish indeed to give anyone the false idea that a new revelation is immediately forthcoming on the issue of the Negroes receiving the priesthood. And again, the note says, yet this happened only 11 years after this was written. Yeah, so basically, all the prophets before were like, no, this isn't going to happen based on a revelation. We've already excuse me, we've already determined this is going to something that happens during Jesus's millennial reign of peace. But that's not how it ended up going down. Not at all, because blacks today can receive the priesthood, and I'm sure that most Mormons would agree this is not Jesus' millennium of peace that we are living in right now. The fact is, however, that our present prophets are in complete agreement with Brigham Young and other past leaders on the question of the Negro and the priesthood. President McKay was asked by a news reporter at the dedication of the Oakland Temple, when will the Negroes receive the priesthood? He responded to the question over a national television network saying, not in my lifetime, young man, nor yours. Yeah, unless he died in the next 11 years, that is not what happened. Not at all. And how can you call someone a prophet when the things that they say do not come true and are overridden by the next prophet that comes along? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not how prophecies work. That's not what a prophecy is. It either comes true or it doesn't. So if one prophet says something that turned out not to be true, then that prophet wasn't a prophet. Mormons view a prophet as God's literal mouthpiece on earth. When a prophet speaks as a prophet, it carries the same force as one of the 10 Commandments. That should debunk pretty much everything. I mean, the fact that they believe that if a prophet is speaking as a prophet, not everything they say is like 100% true and just completely like divine will. There shouldn't be any Mormons today then. I mean, okay, so the Negroes will not be allowed to hold the priesthood during mortality. In fact, not until the resurrection of all of Adam's children. The other stipulation requires that Abel's seed receive the first opportunity of having the priesthood. So I don't 100% know who that is. I would just assume it's like everyone else who isn't black, I guess. I don't know. Well, I mean, Abel's seed. Abel didn't even have any kids, did he? I don't think so. But yeah, the point is, the idea here is that black people will not have the priesthood until all of somebody else gets the priesthood. And evidently that is not what happened. Because, like I said, black people have the priesthood now and nothing's changed. Oh, okay, so apparently there's supposed to be a resurrection. So that hasn't happened, so there definitely should not be any black people in the priesthood, and yet there are. Oh boy. Interracial marriage and the Negro. Oh boy, this will be fun, because I don't know if you can tell, but I am personally the result of an interracial marriage, so this is slightly important to me. Just slightly. I'm also in an interracial relationship, and I'm the result of an interracial relationship, so yeah, this is kind of an issue to me. And frankly, I really don't care about all of this stuff. Chosen people, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, we are not unmindful of the fact that there is a growing tendency, particularly among some educators, as it manifests itself in the area, toward the breaking down of race barriers in the matter of intermarriage between white and blacks. They say blacks now, but all this time they've been saying Negroes. Why didn't they just... Ugh. But it does not have the sanction of the church and is contrary to church doctrine. Brigham Young made a very strong statement in this matter when he said, I would like the President of the United States and all the world to hear this. Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Canaan, or with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. God had commanded Israel not to intermarry. To go against his commandment of God would be to sin. Those who willfully sin with their eyes open to this wrong will not be surprised to find that they will be separated from the presence of God in the world to come. This is spiritual death. President Joseph Smith said, I'd rather go myself to the grave than to be associated with a wife outside of the bonds of the new and everlasting covenant. Let Negroes marry Negroes, and let whites marry white, and let every other race do the same. Here's something that I have been thinking about for the people that are against interracial marriage. If this difference between races is so significant that God does not want them interbreeding, Why make them sexually compatible at all? Why make it so they can have kids with each other? Or that those kids would be viable and be able to survive and produce more offspring of their own? Like, if you didn't want them intermingling, why did you make that possible? If you're already going to make racial segregation between the different human races, you might as well make them different species. You might as well make there be differences between them that don't allow them to copulate successfully and to make children. Like, if your God really didn't want this to happen so bad, then why did he even make it possible? No person having the least particle of Negro blood can hold the priesthood. So, even if you're real light skinned, if you've got a black ancestor, you're out. Even if, for all intents and purposes, you look white. Oh, that's a good question. What if you have a black ancestor so far back in your lineage that you don't know about it, and that you have no physical traits that would make you appear like you have any black ancestry? Because I know white people who have black or light skinned or mixed great grandparents or grandparents who don't look it at all. They don't look like they have any black ancestry. So, what if one of them got the priesthood and they just didn't know about their lineage? And now, what is the status of the Negro in the Mormon Church? So basically, yeah, they can't hold the priesthood leadership position, but are they allowed to do anything else in the church? Are they allowed to be members of the church? Blah, blah, blah. And of course, they claim that the Mormon Church, can do more for the Negro than any other church on the face of the earth. Of course they say that, because they think they're the only true church. So of course they can do better for them than anybody else. If you think you're the only true church, duh. The Jehovah's Witnesses say the same thing. They make a big boast about how racially integrated they are, how they have people all over the world of every color and creed. So, yeah, of course they're going to say that, but if there is racial discrimination within the church, then obviously it's not going to be the best for them. Obviously. So, what can a Negro do once he is a member of the Mormon Church? You can be a teacher. You can be an administrator. Other positions. Yeah, so basically little things, but no major leadership positions within the church. It's basically how women are with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm sure with the Mormon Church as well, they don't really let women do things either. So this is just being like, you can still pray, you can still partake of the sacrament, you can still give sermons, which is just really basic ass stuff. Like, yeah, you can be a basic member, but if you can't take up a leadership position, then yeah. Oh, so they can enter the temple, but they cannot be endowed or sealed. I don't know what endowed is, but I know that being sealed basically means being married within the Mormon Church. So apparently the Mormon Church won't marry black people. That's cool. And then they basically just list a bunch of things that would make you worthy of being a church member. It is true. Oh, summary on the status of the Negro. It is true that the Negro is not entitled to the priesthood in the Mormon Church. The worthy Mormon Negro, however, is entitled to function as a teacher, administrator, and active member. There is much that the Negro can do. He's able to be baptized, confirmed. Oh, it's just a summary of everything else. It's really not interesting. Again, we repeat, the Mormon Church can do more for the Negro than any other church on the face of the earth. I mean, it's not like there aren't churches that don't have leadership positions that are available to black people. And if there are, then that church automatically can do more than the Mormon Church can, like by default. Oof, comments by and about Mormon Negroes. This will be interesting. Let me see if I can find any juicy choice quotes here. So this guy is a Mormon who is black, and in an article published in January 1966 Improvement Era, he made known his feelings about not holding the priesthood. But John Lamb, everyone I met seemed to ask, what about the priesthood? You are a Negro. You were really brainwashed by those Mormons, weren't you? Yes, that's how that works. And my answer was, and still is, I know this to be the inspired, restored gospel of Jesus Christ, not through blind faith, but through a knowledge that I have gained from our Heavenly Father. What does that mean? That doesn't have anything to do with the question. Just like, I know this to be true, it's true, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, etc. Like, that does not answer the question about the discrimination. Now it's going into some testimonies and some, Negroes that were involved in the church. And to be honest, I don't care so much about this. I really don't. Now we have some words from the church leaders. Brigham Young. Formerly, the rumor was that they, Mormons, were going to tamper with the slaves, when we had never thought of such a thing. I will here say a little more upon this point. The conduct of the whites toward the slaves will in many cases send both slave and master to hell. This statement comprises much in a few words. The blacks should be used like servants, not like brutes. Oh, it is their privilege to live so as to enjoy many of the blessings which attend obedience to the first principles of the gospel, though they are not entitled to the priesthood. Yikes. So, they should still be in subjection, but man, they just shouldn't be treated so badly. Like, how long is that race to endure the dreadful curse that is upon them? That curse will remain upon them, and they never can hold the priesthood or share in it until all the other descendants of Adam have received the promises and enjoyed the blessings of the priesthood and the keys thereof. Yeah, that did not happen. Did not happen. Yeah, I'm getting bored of reading this, and it's not getting better. Yeah, there isn't a whole lot more here that is of any interest. This is all just references and stuff. So, yeah, I would love to hear what Black Mormons have to say about this kind of stuff, and I'm sure it's going to be all the same apologetics that I used to use about, how misogynistic the Jehovah's Witness organization is. But, yeah, that's it. That's the highlights, I guess. I mean, I didn't go through every last bit of it, obviously, but it was not an enjoyable read, so forgive me for not being a little bit more thorough, but it was not an enjoyable read. Well, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, leave a comment, and most importantly, share it. Perhaps with some members of the Mormon Church. That would be interesting. I'd love to hear their thoughts on this. If you don't follow me on Twitter already, you definitely should. That is where I connect with my YouTube community the most, and you'll hear about upcoming live streams and things like that on there, and might even be able to put in some input about future videos. So definitely follow me on Twitter at xcultbaby. And if you'd like to support my work, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The lowest patron tier is only $1 a month, and every little bit helps, so I'd really appreciate that. Alright, I am xcultbaby reminding you to go free yourself. Thank you for watching. Additional thanks to my amazing patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support my work.